dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew? It's your boy DJ New Kid, your girl
Sierra Nicole.
We're back on the channel with another Mr. Ballen. This time, man, you want to do it?
No.
You don't want to do Ballen? Try.
I gotta like warm them up, you know. I feel like.
Hit a sip of water.
No.
Ballen.
Yeah, that's good enough.
No. Oh, back with Mr. Ballen, man. This time we got the tube sock killer. Yo, it's a new mystery murderer. Mm-hmm. What else with the tube sock killer? Is he probably a serial killer that we never heard about?
Or is it just...
Or did he just...
Well, I don't know. But
this one could be crazy and weird, bro.
Yeah.
Because, you know...
Because the title alone, I'm like, what? You know what I'm saying?
Because I want to know what's the motive behind being called the tube sock killer. Did you leave a tube sock at the scene of the crime every time? Or were you spotted wearing, you know what I'm saying, tube socks? That was your style? Or did you strangle somebody with one?
We better find out.
I ain't gonna lie, my aunt that got out of jail, first time meeting, the man had the Chuck Taylor with the long tube sock stretched out. I said, inmate.
Child.
Hey, well, you been behind the bars all these years. That was my first time ever meeting you. White beater, chucks, tube socks. What up, inmate? So with that being said, man, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want the first part, you gotta do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, all you gotta do is lock it in with a thumbs up for us. But you ready, girl?
I'm ready.
She picked this one out too, y'all. So
hopefully it's good.
It's on her this time. Most times, well, not with these. We switch them up, though.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let go.
If you live in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, then you want to pay close attention to the ending of today's video. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please ask the like button to go for a walk with you in northeastern Australia and push them into a gimpy plant. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story. In 1985, 36-year-old Michael Reamer was a roofer in Tacoma, Washington, and his boss described him as being a work hard, play hard type of guy.
Dang, what was the year? Y'all, she always do me. She put my pen and my paper all the way over there every single time. And I gotta get the reaching and teaching. All right, let's get back to it, man.
In 1985, 36-year-old Michael Reamer was a roofer in Tacoma, Washington, and his boss described him as being a work hard, play hard type of guy. In the winter months, when there really wasn't any roofing to be done, Mike would supplement his income by trapping coyote, mink, and muskrat in the forest that butted up against the Nisqually River, which was an 80-mile stretch that ran right near his home. Most of the traps Mike would set would be far away from any actual trail, because wherever there was a trail, you would have human foot traffic, and that would scare away the animals that you're trying to catch in your trap. And so as a result, he would place his traps in very remote, isolated sections of the forest, which meant he needed to know where those sections were. And so over the 15 years he spent trapping in this forest, he got really, really good at navigating it. It was like he had a map in his head of where everything was in this forest. Plus, Mike was already an avid outdoorsman, and so navigating a forest and being out in the wild was something that just kind of came naturally to him. Mike's girlfriend was a 21-year-old woman named Diana Robertson, and they had a 2-year-old daughter named Crystal. Mike and Diana had a rocky relationship relationship, to say the least. In fact, in October of that year, Diana had filed a restraining order against Mike after he had kicked in the door and thrown her to the ground. Mike also always carried a gun on him, and he had a very quick temper. But despite their significant relationship issues, the one thing they could always see eye to eye on was their daughter, Crystal. They adored her, and when it came to decisions about her, they were always on the same page. It was whatever is in the best interest of Crystal. In December of that year, Diana and Mike were able to reconcile, and so Diana threw the restraining order out. And in fact, she and Crystal moved back in with Mike, which made Crystal very, very happy. Just a couple of days after moving back in, they decided they wanted to go out and go camping together as a family, and then also pick out a real Christmas tree they could bring back for the holidays. And so they settled on an area that was going to be in the same forest where Mike had all of his traps set, and they figured they could, get their family time in, they could get their Christmas tree, and Mike would be able to check his traps, saving himself from making another trip later on. So on December 12th, the three of them loaded up into Mike's red pickup truck, and they drove the 30 minutes down towards Nisqually River, where there was this logging road that Mike would use to park his truck and then walk in to check his traps. So Mike pulls over on the side of the road, they all hop out, and Mike leads the way right into the middle of the woods. There's no trail. Mike is just bringing them to an area where, one, his traps will be, and two, he thinks is suitable for camping and for looking for a Christmas tree. Later that afternoon, Crystal was spotted walking around a parking lot of a Kmart 20 miles away from where Mike had parked the car near
20 miles. And that's a little girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. And then my whole thing is, I understand your traps out there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But also, you ain't gotta go off the grid like that.
Yeah.
But
some people,
like he said, he got 15 years of experience with the area, so he might not be afraid like any other typical person. Yeah. So I don't know. But 20 miles away, then where they was camping at, she's found after I already went 30 miles away to the campground. So that's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
River, and she's just walking around. She looks totally confused. She's all alone, and the employees of the Kmart are looking out, and they see this girl, and they're all watching, waiting for her parents or a guardian or someone to walk over and show that they are with this girl. But after a couple of minutes, when no one does that, one of the employees goes out and tries to talk to her. And this employee would say when she talked to the girl, she kept looking over her shoulder and she was just terrified the whole time. And so this employee asked her, what's your name? And she didn't say anything. She asked her, where are you coming from? Where are your parents? Who's looking after you? And to all the questions she was asked, she didn't say anything. She just looked terrified and was looking over her shoulder. And so this employee brings the girl back inside and they call the police. And so the police show up and they ask the girl the same questions that the employees have been asking her, and the girl's still not speaking. And so after they made an announcement inside to say, hey, is anybody in here the parent or guardian of this child? And no one came forward. They said, okay, well, we have no other choice, but we're gonna have to move her to temporary foster care. And so they move her to a foster home, and then they put an ad out in the newspaper that day with a picture of her, basically saying, if you know me, contact this number. 2 days later, Crystal's maternal grandmother would see the picture in the newspaper, and the ad did not have a description of, how she was discovered. It just said she had been found at this particular Kmart, and if you know who she is, please contact this number. Even without the details, the grandmother knows something has gone wrong, because there's no reason in the world those two parents would abandon their beloved Crystal. And so she calls Diana, she calls Mike, they don't pick up the phone. That's when she calls the number and she says, what's going on? I'm her grandmother, where is she? The police tell her to go to the foster home and they will meet her there and they're gonna talk about what happened. So the grandmother flies to the foster home and she arrives there before the police. She goes inside and Crystal is so happy to see her. It's the first time Crystal has really broken out of that kind of catatonic state she had been in ever since she was found at the Kmart. And so she runs up to her grandmother, they have this reunion, and the grandmother's so happy to see Crystal, but she's also thinking, where are your parents? Where are Diana and Mike? And so she asks Crystal, where are they, honey? Where is your mom? Where's your dad? And Crystal would speak to her grandmother and she would say, Mommy's in the trees. Her grandmother didn't know what this meant, and so she tried to ask clarifying questions, but Crystal was not very verbal. She was not able to articulate more than what she was saying, so she just kept repeating it, saying, Mommy's in the trees, Mommy's in the trees. And so then the police show up and the grandmother turns to them and she says, where are her parents? Where are Mike and Diana? And the police turn to her and they're like, we don't know. We found her abandoned in this parking lot and she wasn't speaking and no one knew anything about her. And so until right now, we didn't even know her parents' names. Do you have any idea where they might be? And the grandmother's like, I have no idea. I mean, I'm just learning about all of this stuff now. But when I came over here, Crystal said to me, Mommy's in the trees. And you know, she's not very verbal, so she can't explain much more than that. But she just kept saying, Mommy's in the trees. And I know Mike liked to go camping in this one area near the Nisqually River. He keeps traps out near the edge of the water. He catches some small animals out there. So I know he goes out there and goes camping. And so maybe that's what Crystal's referencing, that they were in the trees. So they were in that forest over there. The grandmother also gave the police the address to Mike's house. And the police use that information to launch their search for the parents. And so the first place they go is Mike's house. And
the biggest question of everything to start off is how does 2-year-old girl get
in the right.
that far? Did Mike drop her off and he went on a run? Because the only thing she's saying is mommy's in the trees, but she's not saying where's dad at. You get what I'm saying?
But then it makes me think also, like in the beginning, like, because they were like, you know, they'll do anything for their daughter. So it's kind of like, why would you like just leave her out in the parking lot if you care, you know?
Because
it's because you knew someone would like see this little girl and
she'll
like
be
come
safe
to her rescue. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
She'll be safer.
But that's not a guarantee though. It'd be different if you took her inside the store maybe or...
But you didn't want to drop off with family and stuff because then
that'll really raise some... Yeah, I don't know.
It's still effed up at the end of the day, like the mindset of all this stuff. But because then the reason why she got out of the trend, she saw somebody she recognized and somebody she knew as far as love, safety, peace.
It was secure.
So she know grandma is a safe place.
Yeah.
So I can warm up to mama and actually grandma and actually talk to her. But mama in the trees, that is very scary, bro.
Yeah.
And then she saw that. Hopefully, with her being 2, she might not remember it all, but she might have vivid images of memory. Because some 2-year-olds, some people still remember things at 2. But if the child saw something that traumatic, you know.
The lights are off, the door's locked, and his red pickup truck, because the grandmother said he drove a red pickup truck, his red pickup truck is not there. And so they rule out his house, they're not there, and they begin flying a plane not only over Tacoma, which is the area where they were living, but also over that forest that was right up against the Nisqually River. And as they're flying, they're looking for campsites that could potentially be Mike and Diana, but they're also looking for the red pickup truck, which is fairly distinctive. And after a couple of days of flying all over the forest and looking around the side streets and putting people in the forest walking on foot, they couldn't find anything and they turned the search off. And they would tell the grandmother and the rest of the family on Diana's and Mike's side that they really just needed to wait for more information to come in because they couldn't just spend an indefinite amount of time scanning a fairly large area. They have all of Tacoma and this huge forest. And so everyone just had to wait. 2 months later, a man and his dog were out walking on this logging road that was about 10 miles away from the Nisqually River and 30 miles away from the Kmart where Crystal was found. And they're walking on this road and they see way off in the distance, there's this truck that's pulled over to the side of this road. And even from a distance, they can tell it's covered in snow. But it hasn't snowed recently. There's snow on the ground, but the amount of snow that is on this truck indicates it's been sitting here for quite a while. And so as they get closer to the truck, this man is looking around, seeing if maybe the owner is nearby, even though it seemed unlikely given the fact that it looks like it's been sitting here a while. And so after he stands there for a minute, looking around, feeling pretty confident there's no one in the area, he brushes the snow off the passenger side window and he looks inside and he doesn't see anything at first, but he notices on the passenger front seat, there's a significant amount of blood on the seat, or what appears to be blood. And this startles the guy, so he backs up from it and he and his dog very quickly leave this area because they're in this kind of desolate, logging road. He's pretty isolated. And so he gets out of there as quickly as he can. And when he gets to a phone, he calls the police. Police show up and they brush the rest of the snow off and they find it is a red pickup truck. It's Mike's red pickup truck. Mike and Diana's case had been very big news in the area when it happened, and the news had really not gone away. People were out there looking for this couple. And so as soon as they saw this was Mike's truck, they start fanning out and searching the area, seeing if they can find any other clues about what happened to Mike and Diana. And very quickly, they discovered Diana's body. She was located not far from the red truck, just barely off the road in the forest. She was under several inches of snow, and she had been stabbed 17 times, and there was a tube sock wrapped around her neck. There was no sign of Mike, but once they got inside the truck, there was a manila folder that had been tucked up on the dashboard that just said, "I love you, Diana." When police showed that message to Diana's family, they all said, "That looks like Mike's handwriting. He used to send us handwritten Christmas cards, and that looks exactly the way he writes." As for the blood that was on the passenger seat inside the truck, it had been sitting out for too long, so they weren't able to determine whose blood it was, but they were able to determine it was human. So between the blood on the front seat, the note that was left on the dashboard, the personal furious nature of the way in which Diana was killed, combined with Mike's history of violence and his disappearance, because he's not here anymore, that all made it seem an awful lot like Mike was the guy that did this. In fact, this made for a very tidy ending to a mystery that had actually started before Diana had been killed. On August 10th, 1985, so 4 months before Mike, Diana, and Crystal ventured off into the woods near Nisqually River, 27-year-old Stephen Harkins and his girlfriend, 42-year-old Ruth Cooper, were going camping near Nisqually River in the same forest. They were actually about 15 miles from where Diana's body was ultimately found, and they were very close to a number of Mike's traps, although they probably didn't realize they were near them. During their trip, an unknown assailant walked up to their campsite in the middle of the night and shot them both to death. Stephen was found right away, and he was found inside of his sleeping bag at their campsite, indicating he had been killed in his sleep. Ruth wasn't found for months, and when she was found 1.5 miles away from the campsite, and she had a tube sock tied around her neck the same way Diana had. And the knot that was used on the tube sock was even the same as the knot used on Diana's tube sock. So the similarity was just too much to overlook. And so to the police, they're thinking, Mike has to be the guy in both of these cases. You know, he attacked Ruth and Stephen, perhaps because they were, on his territory where his traps were, and he didn't like that. He has a history of violence, and so he attacks them. And then a couple months later, he attacks Diana, and then he flees. As for
well, no, the trap thing, it could have been because of the traps, or because he already had a toxic relationship with Diana anyway, had built up aggression, had the restraining order against her. Mm-hmm. To be honest, could have just built up and became some crazy guy.
He was probably for a while, probably showing different signs of
anger issues.
Yeah, but that could have like he said, them just being on what he feel like is his territory, because I've been out here and I done you know what I'm saying? What?
How old was Mike?
I don't know. I just know she was in her 20s. She was 21.
Yeah, 21-year-old Diana was 21. Had a 2-year-old. Mike been out in these woods for 15 years.
He could have been older than her, possibly.
And that's another thing. A lot of times with older men, they are very possessive, especially when they have a younger woman.
Yeah.
They are controlling and very possessive, aka like he said, the trap thing. Yeah. This is my territory. Just because you've been wandering this land for 15 years, you got to trap. Or they might have touched the trap, but if traps are just out here, or just, I don't see nobody out here, I might bother a trap, but it's not like I'm doing it on purpose and I know it's yours.
Or it wasn't even that they were bothered, they was just there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He was like, this my, you on my territory. But who knows exactly what even caused him to shoot, shoot the man in his sleep. And then for her to be found a mile away, did she was she startled, woke up, ran, or did she see him or something?
He chased her down.
Chased her down.
So will we consider him a serial killer? You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
because some people based off the stuff,
but a lot of people always be like, well, to be considered that you have to be 3 or more. But I'm like, well, technically
he got 3, but he used the gun.
I don't know.
I would consider him one.
But regardless of the fact, we know he's a killer. So.
I would consider him one.
However you want to label it.
Because
he's still a killer.
Because the thing is, maybe he got caught before he could really full-fledged and get off the haywire or whatever you want to consider it, before he could really let loose out here.
My main thing is I'm just trying to figure out how Crystal got where she.
Oh, that's what you still
I'm really I'm kind of
She could have just
on
took off running because she wasn't that far away though. She could have just took off running because he could have killed her, or he could have kidnapped her and took her. And she just kept fighting, and he just said, "All right, forget it." He could have sexual assaulted her, and
I don't,
because it was 85. Because you got to think about it, they ain't have the same kits and DNA kits and all that back then.
But I kind of don't. I don't know. I don't want to think about that. But I just do want to know how she got to the parking lot, though.
Yeah,
like
she could take off running.
Yeah, possible.
Daughter being found alive at the Kmart, it would seem he just did not have it in him to harm his own child, and so he dropped her off at the Kmart before he ultimately fled. Despite everything seeming to fit just perfectly to where, yep, Mike is definitely the guy, not only for Diana, but for Ruth and for Steven, we figured it out. Despite that being the overwhelming feeling, there were a couple of questions that remained unanswered. Like the FBI, they were unable to confirm the handwriting on that folder that said, "I love you, Diana." They were unable to confirm that that in fact was Mike's handwriting. Diana's family was really convinced it was his, but the FBI said it's not necessarily a match. And
True. Man, we could be jumping the gun because
do you possibly think
the family could be trying to point in his my bad, but the family could also be trying to point in the direction because we don't know where Mike is. Mike is missing.
Because normally that's the first thing, because she's had a restraining order against him before. He's shown all this aggression, so it's like, and sometimes
he's done that to us before. Mr. Ballen has done that to us before.
But I don't know. I don't know. Because then I was like, well,
I can
possibly,
see a twist coming.
Maybe.
I hope. But at the end of the day, it's
still sad, regardless of the fact of who's ever behind it. But yeah.
Have the motives for the two crimes. We can understand one of them. Him attacking Diana, unfortunately, people attack their partners all the time, and so we can understand that. We can rationalize that. But for him to attack Ruth and Steven, two total strangers, because they encroached on your land, even though it's not your land, it's public land, and you just happen to put your traps out there, that didn't seem like a strong enough reason for him to want to kill them. But the circumstantial evidence was overwhelmingly pointing at Mike being the guy. You have the fact that he's this violent guy with a history of domestic abuse. He knows this area well where both crimes were committed. You have the tube sock tied around Diana the same way it's tied around Ruth. It just had to be Mike. And so because the police felt so strongly it had to be Mike, they were willing to overlook these lingering questions. And so the police wanted to issue an arrest warrant for Mike, but they needed to be able to prove he was alive, because if he was dead, then that calls into question his ability to have committed these two crimes. And so they didn't have proof he was alive. And so very quickly, this story faded out of the headlines because basically everybody believed Mike had done it and he had run off somewhere, and maybe someday we'll figure out where he went and we'll bring him to justice. But until then, we know he's the guy. For years, no one heard from Mike, no one saw Mike. It was like he had just totally vanished. Crystal was raised by relatives, and many of the detectives that were working on these cases eventually retired or moved on. Then, 25 years later, in March of 2011, a hiker was walking through the forest near the Nisqually River, about 1 mile from where Diana's body was found, and they would stumble upon a piece of a human skull. She calls the police show up, they search the area, and they discover another bone, a human jawbone. And it would turn out it was Mike's. Wow. The rest of Mike's remains were never found, and because there was so little of him to work with, police were not able to determine a cause of death. However, they were able to date his death back to almost exactly the same time frame that Diana had died. Additionally, investigators believe the reason they did not find more of Mike's remains is because he had been buried. The two bones that were found, the skull and the jawbone, they were located within 1 mile of where Diana's body had been found, and that area, after Diana had been found, had been scoured. They looked everywhere for clues, and because he apparently died at the same time she did, he would have been out there and they would have found him. So the fact that they didn't find him can only mean he was underground. So this all meant Mike could not have been the killer. Because in order for him to have been the killer, he not only would have had to attack Diana and then drive his daughter to the Kmart and then drive back to the forest, He would then need to take his own life and then also somehow bury himself. Some of the police officers that had worked that case were still on the police force, and so when they heard this news about Mike not being the killer, they were like, it never really made any sense that he would attack Ruth or Steven, unless he was a serial killer. And then it clicked. They probably were dealing with a serial killer. It just wasn't Mike. And their only eyewitness was the toddler, Crystal, who apparently the serial killer could not bring themselves to harm. And so as a result, Crystal just sat there and watched these horrible things happen to her parents, and then probably spent a fair amount of time with the serial killer afterwards because they needed to drive her to the Kmart. Investigators and her family had tried to get her to give more information about what she had witnessed, but all she could say was, "Mommy's in the trees." And so there are really only two interpretations of what that means. Either one, she was just stating that her mother was in the forest, and that would have been accurate, or she's remembering her mother trying to escape a serial killer by climbing up into a tree. Or maybe even that she was in the tree with her mother as they both were trying to escape a serial killer with a knife. So when the police have this revelation that Mike was not the killer, that in fact it was probably a serial killer, and we know nothing about this serial killer besides what Crystal had to say as a toddler, and that didn't provide any sort of real clarity on who this person was or what their MO was. They went back and looked at all the unsolved murders in the Pacific Northwest, specifically around this forest. They discovered that in addition to Mike and Diana and Ruth and Steven, there were 4 other sets of couples that were killed in and around this forest, and all of them bared striking resemblances to one another. The most recent attack that is associated with the tube sock killer occurred in 2006, but the reality is police don't really know anything about the tube sock killer. All they know is that they're probably in the Pacific Northwest, and they are definitely still at large. So that's gonna do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments what it is and where you found it, so give us the timestamp. And if you're the first to do that, we will pin you at the top of the comments section. If you enjoy...
I found the hidden message, though. Did you see the hidden message?
What?
Do you ever find a hidden message in it? It was the screen mask. I found it in this one. I found it in another one time before, and it was Freddy Krueger.
Oh, okay, I did.
Like and then it had flashlight right here.
I did it.
Yeah, like if you pay attention,
But yeah.
That's what.
But okay,
but back.
This is my thing. That's the reason why.
Hold
Go
on.
ahead.
Let me say this. First thing, we have to apologize to Mike.
Most definitely. R.I.P. to Mike. But.
And the way society has trained us to look at things, we always blame the
significant other. Yeah.
It's most of the time, especially the male.
But that's the reason why I was kind of hung up on it, because I was like, it didn't make sense to me, regardless of the fact that I was like, okay, well, everything that's being presented makes it seem like it's him, so I have no choice but to be like, okay, well, he's, the one responsible for it. But then I was so hung up on the little girl just being dropped off at a Kmart, like in the middle of nowhere, basically, or whatever the case. And it just didn't make sense that her dad would do that to her because of how he stated in the beginning, his love and care, and how, regardless of their differences. Let
me say this. Also, the reason why it really didn't make sense, because like we said, well, she was also killed inside the truck. Because her blood, or who was killed inside the truck.
We don't know exactly who. They couldn't determine whose blood there was. No, I was just going to say, that's why I was kind of hung up on it. It didn't make sense to me. Go ahead.
No, go. I remember.
I'm done. Go ahead.
No, I remember now. That's why I was I remember. No, the reason, because we also hung up on what would have been his motive to kill the first.
Yeah, and that was another thing. I was like, what? Like, because just you being on my, like, this is not your land. So, just them being out there, it just wasn't enough. But again, I'm like, okay, well, if this is all that's being presented, then I guess, he's just probably upset. You never know what triggered people to, do the things that they do, or whatever the case may be. So I was just like, oh, but I still kept going back. Was like, but that still don't make sense, because he don't seem like he'll just abandon his daughter, or just leave her, or just period. Because I always think about, like, if you, like, for me personally, I'm like, if you just love somebody so much, right, like your child or whatever the case may be, even taking a parent, like, kind of in my eyes, I'm like, you can say all day you like love someone so much, or I will never do anything to hurt you, but that is a form of hurting, taking my mother away from me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, it just didn't make sense, and I'm just like, it has to be something else. Like, it just was something missing. It was just a piece of information missing, and I was just like, well, I don't really have much to go off of, so.
Not even that. So then we also take into the play, because we also got to consider this.
What?
Like, Mike, only reason why Mike probably hasn't been targeted the 15 years he had been roaming the area is due to the factor of he was always alone. Yeah. He was not, because
and this person's motive was more so of couples.
Mm-hmm. He targeted couples. And he probably targeted Mike right away because he recognized Mike. Or kind of like the Ted Bundy situation we had saw. He just got done with a victim. Mm-hmm. And he saw y'all out there. And he was like, I got to get on y'all right away. Mm-hmm. Because he got somebody in the truck. Mm-hmm. Like, so it could have possibly be, like he said, like Mr. Ballen said, that possibly Diana and the mom went running into the trees. He got Mike right away. Mike was killed inside the truck.
You mean Crystal and Diana? Crystal and the mom. You just said it backwards.
Oh, my bad.
Diana is the mom. Crystal is the child.
But Diana and the child probably had ran off into the woods, and he had to chase her down, and then got a hold to her and just stabbed her multiple times. But he probably got Mike in the truck. But I don't think he quickly buried Mike. I just don't believe he buried Mike that quick. I do believe sometimes in a lot of situations they might take the body sometimes and then bring the body back. Because whoever it was is very familiar with the area as well. Because that's his killing ground.
But honestly, was it that quick? Because we don't know the time frame per se. Like, we don't know exactly.
Reason why I said that, it takes a long time to... Well, it's a shallow grave, so it doesn't take that long. But it still takes some time to, especially in cold, harsh conditions, and the ground is harder because it was in December. And we all know Washington, December, it's cold as hell. The ground is harder when it's cold. And it's been snowing.
Or was it just he was covered with a pile of snow and they just didn't think to like,
But for how long they said, but for them to only find him in 2011 and it's like his body scattered.
But no, I'm just saying when they were out there searching.
Yeah. Also, the animals could have got his body, and that's why his body was in one place, in another place, and they couldn't find the rest of his body. Is because he probably.
At this point, it's just kind of like speculations, and
But it's crazy because we constantly keep hearing that there's always serial killers out here, but we just never know. And then, to be honest, if y'all didn't 100% try to lock in on Mike as the police officer, because a lot of times y'all come for us for prejudging the situation. We ain't even law enforcement, and we prejudge as just regular individuals. But when law enforcement prejudge, when that is your job, it's even 10 times worse. Like, individuals that don't know law enforcement, we prejudge, we expected to. You know what I mean?
I mean, but at the same time, everybody, like, you still human at the end of the day. You only going off of what you have. So it's kind of like, at the same time, like, probably, like, dig for more or try to see.
But the reason why I'm saying this is because if y'all didn't 100% just lock in on the fact that it's a possibility that Mike murdered Diane, because I really feel like they locked in because Diane was stabbed 17 times,
and also because they couldn't find him. So and they head was kind of like
that's a missing person. Just at the end of the day, you can't just fully focus in that Mike is the killer. It's a missing person. But the reason why a lot of times you lock in Diane was stabbed 17 times. A lot of times when we think about stabbing,
it's very personal.
It's personal. 17 times, and Mike is missing, and so we thinking it's Mike. Yeah. But if they had kept paying attention to the area and everything that was going on, other couples came up murdered in that area as well, and so y'all are not connecting Diana and Mike's situation. Also, the other two individuals with those other murders. If y'all had started connecting, hey, we're having
there's
couples
a pattern here,
murder in this area. maybe Mike is not the suspect. Maybe Mike is a victim as well, and we just can't locate Mike.
No, I definitely agree, but I'm just saying.
That's why I was trying to get to this.
I got what you were saying. I got what you were saying, but I'm just saying, like, initially, like, when you go into something, like, initially, like we said in the beginning, 9 times out of 10, your significant other is always looked at first as the suspect, especially when they're MIA. And they have nothing else to, like, go off of. But, yes, they should have done more digging, more, like, linking things together, seeing what other crimes possibly may have happened in this area.
After all this time, y'all say a lot of the couples resembled each other.
Yeah, that's kind of freaky
to
me.
Is it just the image, or is the way they dress, or is the way they carry themselves?
Or is it, like, maybe, like, their hair, same hair color, like, same, like, you know.
Were they all possibly Caucasian?
Yeah.
Or were they...
You know what I'm saying?
Like, because, and then the latest one dated back to 2006.
Yeah.
You know what I started thinking about?
What
dude was talking about how he believed his dad is a...
yeah.
Oh, a lot of stuff be coming back to be on my mind about that situation because...
Was that the same area?
Yes, his dad was always up in that area.
In that area, yeah.
And he said he believed his dad because he has vivid memories of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that is kind of freaky though. But yeah, like that is.
And y'all possibly could have been solved this case if y'all have started somebody radar click.
Yeah.
Okay, this ain't no coincidence. And then especially after the next murder y'all had found, and then we found another couple. My mind would have been like, okay, something's.
You know something? Honestly, for me, I would have definitely like. It because again, like going back and kill Ruth and I forgot Ruth and
the first two.
Yeah, but
and they
it
probably
just
wasn't
didn't make
the first two.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they probably wasn't. But it just didn't make sense. I'm like, why would he like? You know what I'm saying?
And that's why we were so hung
I'm like
up on
over a land, over something that's not your. I mean, I understand your traps area, but that just didn't make sense. That's not enough to like take someone out.
And my thing is, I'm trying to fish like, all right, maybe because you know what I'm saying, he's possessive. He already had a restraining order. He got angry. He was already pushed to the limit. That note that envelope could have been from Mike, but we also got to realize he was trying to rekindle things with Diana.
Because that's why he initially was taking her after, right?
Yeah,
the daughter. Yeah, he was going to present that to her.
Yeah, we don't know what's in the envelope because we just see this.
Yeah,
what's inside the envelope? Because for an individual, I ain't gonna count. If an individual is a type of person who handwrites holiday cards,
yeah.
Just know this person that's how they express themselves.
Yeah.
By handwritten things. So we don't know what was in there.
But with law enforcement saying like initially his whatever piece of information that they have with his like handwriting didn't match that. My handwriting don't look the same all the time, but I know they do have experts that like be able to like how you like do a certain whatever. But what's actually in the inside?
Because I highly doubt whoever the Tucson killer is. I highly doubt that he went and said, write this on the envelope and all that. You know what I'm saying? Try to throw them because we never found anything else from the previous ones. You know what I'm saying? He the guy has an MO. He has his things are it seems like he kills the guy, possibly kills the guy first, and then kills the woman last. And then he always it sounds like he strangles her with a tube sock, and he only knows how to tie the tube sock one way.
Ouch.
But again, man, I don't
know.
Again, we apologize to Mike and his family and loved ones for jumping the gun on a situation like that because we've been put in this position multiple times with Mr. Ballen, but I enjoyed this one though.
And I definitely feel for Crystal because losing two parents, not really having answers, not really remember things or knowing like what
at 2 years old.
Yeah, well that's what I'm saying.
And
just like dang.
That's the reason why she was dropped off because he kills couples and he kills grown-ups just because. And then killers have morals too.
You do have like some people like kids off limits.
Kids off limits, yeah.
I don't know.
They be like, I got morals. Even though I'm sick, I still got morals at the same time. I don't touch kids. So he dropped the kid off and just like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why she kept looking over her shoulder, because she was
with a
reliving,
stranger and
reliving everything she had just saw. So she's in fear.
That's sad. That's so sad.
But hey, man, y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts and opinions.
Yes,
also, if y'all have more information about this, let us know in the comment section down below, because I like hearing about new things and not just the same old things. But as always, y'all know how it go. I do go by the name DJ Kid. This is. We are, y'all.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from